Hello, welcome to Solving Watercolour. I'm Andy. Today we're going to take a look at how we can take this complex seascape photo scene and simplify it for a watercolour painting. Let's start with the sky. Cloudy skies are perfect for wet into wet painting as they're generally filled with soft edge shapes. We can isolate the sky from the foreground by wetting just the sky area. I'm using a 1-inch flat brush just to wet the paper because I find it easier to get a nice clean straight horizon line with it. The paint is going to bloom and run, but as soon as it reaches that dry edge it's going to stop, and that's one way we can keep a bit of control. I can paint most of this painting with this cheap soft-haired calligraphy brush. So let's start with a little cerulean blue for those patches of blue sky. In the photograph I took, there's a lot going on, but here's how I would go about simplifying it. Every subject you paint is just a collection of light and dark shapes. Those shapes can either have soft edges or hard edges, and that's really it. In watercolour, painting on wet paper will create soft edge shapes. Painting on dry paper will give us hard edged shapes. So if we focus on painting from light to dark and only painting the soft edge shapes, that will be 90% of the painting done. Then we'll dry the paper and paint in the remaining 10% of the shapes, which are hard edge shapes, and that will pull the whole thing into focus. For the darker clouds, I'm mixing together ultramarine, Payne's grey and permanent alizarin crimson. Don't be afraid to tilt the paper like I'm doing here to get those colours running in the right direction. By the way, I'm using Arches rough 100% cotton paper. It's in the form of a block, which means that I don't have to stretch the paper first. I only ever use 100% cotton block paper, which is a sturdy 140-pound thickness, because I'm lazy basically, and I don't want to stretch paper. But there's actually a good psychological reason for it too. Good quality watercolour paper is expensive. If you think about that too much, you can become almost too scared to paint on it. Then, if you're investing time and effort into stretching that paper too, you've just raised the stakes even higher and put more pressure on yourself to get it right. In watercolour, you need to allow yourself the freedom to relax and make mistakes if you're ever going to progress. Now the sky's done, I'm going to wet the sand area. See how in the photo the wet sand reflects the sky, but it's generally darker. So I'm going to carry on painting cloud shapes, but I'm also going to blend in some burnt umber with ultramarine and my purpley grey cloud mixture. If you're finding this tutorial helpful, why not like this video and subscribe to the channel. My website, solvingwatercolour.com, is linked in the description below, and I have a ton of free tutorials there, a free course, Learn How to Paint Watercolour in 7 days, and if you want to go more in depth and learn a whole lot more about this beautiful art form, I have some paid courses too. So now we've got all those soft abstract shapes painted in, we can see that there's really not a whole lot further to go. We're going to dry this off completely now and then come back and pull it all together with some hard edge shapes. On the right there's an unpainted white triangle where the sea will go. This sea is quite churned up with a lot of white foam, so we just need to paint some broken lines of dark surf with a mixture of ultramarine and Payne's grey. I'm still using this cheap little bamboo brush, but it forms a good enough point for me to do this part, and the rough texture of the paper helps break my lines up as well. There, that's it, just enough to indicate the surf. So, I've got all this way with just one bamboo brush, but now I want to paint the land in the distance and the dark rocks in the foreground, and for that I'm going to switch to a 1/4 inch flat brush. The shape of it's really going to lend itself to carving in those shapes. The further away things are, the lighter and bluer they get, so I'm going to put in that distant bit of headland with a mix of ultramarine and Payne's grey. Let's get that completely dry now. Now I'm going to put in the rocks in the foreground. They're a hard edge shape and they're the darkest tonal value in the painting, so I want to mix up a really strong dark grey mix with Payne's grey and ultramarine for this. Again, a flat brush works perfectly for me to get the shapes of those rocks. All that's left to do now is add a few tiny seagulls with a rigger brush, because a seascape just isn't complete without a few seagulls. You don't have to make them perfect V shapes, just a stroke of the brush is enough to create the suggestion of a seagull flying, and I'm going to call this painting done. Thanks for watching today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.